Hello, my name is Thane and I like to experiment with AI art. This week, on 2nd of February 2023, there was a new update to Midjourney. I call it Update 5 as it does not really have another official name. So with this update we got the support for different aspect ratios for both the version 4 and Niji journey. Before you could only generate images in square aspect ratio or 2:3 for portraits and 3:2 for landscapes. Now, the possible aspect ratios are anything between 1:2 and 2:1, but they round out to a resolution that is divisible by 32. So the basic square aspect ratio is 1024 by 1024 pixels with the normal upscaler. The maximum portrait aspect ratio of 1:2 with the normal upscaler gives you an image that is 864 by 1728 pixels. And the maximum landscape aspect ratio of 2:1 gives you an image that is 1728 by 864 pixels. I like the normal upscaler the most out of these, but you can increase the size of your image with the other upscalers. They may work nicely on some images, but do some unpredictable things too. For example, the light upscaler can get you to 1536 by 1536 for the square ratio, or to 2048 by 1024 for a maximum width landscape, or 1024 by 2048 for a maximum height portrait. And the largest you can go is the beta upscaler with 2048 by 2048 for square and 2816 by 1408 for a landscape, or 1408 by 2816. But I personally don't really like the beta upscaler, because it makes the images look like they were painted with very broad strokes, even if you want a photographic quality image or something that is very detailed. It just tends to lose detail. So whenever I have a need to upscale my images, I use all kinds of other external upscalers for that and hope that Midjourney's upscalers will improve someday. But coming back to the aspect ratios, you have a lot of choices. The most popular options probably are still 2:3 and 3:2, 9:16 and 16:9, and maybe even 3:4 and 4:3. There may be other possibilities as well depending on your needs. So just to be clear, I wanted to test out which number the 32 is valid for. So I went ahead and generated an image with the prompt, landscape-seed 777-R 2784 to 1408. The width came when I took the maximum width of the beta upscale 2816 and subtracted 32 from it. I left the height as the same. I got this selection and decided to upscale this one. And it seems I got my answer already from the first upscale. The image is 1728 by 864 pixels, which is the same size as a regular 2:1. The only difference is that I got a slightly different result than I did when I ran the same prompt, but with --R 2:1. So if you need a custom aspect ratio, pick a number between 864 and 1728 that can be divided with 32. Otherwise your wishes will be ignored. Along with the aspect ratios, we also saw a change to the seeds. I have tracked the changes across all the changes in V4 with some very simple prompts and the same seed 777. Let's just compare a few of them with the latest previous version, and if you want to see what some of the prompts that I tested look like, I have added them with all kinds of aspect ratios to the end of this video. But let's start with a simple sphere. So going into it, it looks like at least the default 4B style square aspect ratio does not have that big of a change. The portrait aspect ratio seems to be similar too. The composition looks better. And all the spheres are nicely inside the frame. As it was mentioned in the patch notes, the team worked on improving especially the wider aspect ratio images. It really shows. In the previous version, there still were some funny discolorations on the edges. But there doesn't seem to be any sign of them anymore. And here is a comparison of some of the aspect rations currently possible with the newest version. The taller portrait aspect ratios seem to kind of elongate the spheres, and the composition is still kind of off for them. The wider landscape aspect ratios at least have the spheres with the correct shape, but they get cut off from the edges. It does seem that even if you use the same seed, you are not guaranteed the same selection of variations each time. For example, this kind of sphere comes only with wider aspect ratios. One would expect that you get similar looking images each time, just with a different aspect ratio and slightly different composition. 4A style seems to look pretty much the same still. Only one image looks completely different than before. Portrait aspect ratio shows some more changes. The composition is slightly better, most of the spheres are in frame. And landscape aspect ratio did not look that bad even before. The changes are barely noticeable. The spheres of 4A seem to overall look better than the spheres of 4B. The compositions look okay even with taller or wider aspect ratios. And the spheres are not elongated or misshaped in any way. The cursed style with maximum stylize looks quite similar than it did before, at least in the square aspect ratio. Portrait aspect ratio has some changes. There do still seem to be some border issues going on. Landscape aspect ratio did have some borders or weird edges before, but they are gone now in the newer version. All the landscape images for the cursed style look completely different than before, so big changes have happened. And here are all the different aspect ratios for cursed style that I tested. Right away, when you look at them side by side, it is obvious that basically none of them look the same. It is as if the aspect ratio setting is working like the chaos setting. If you like an image, let's say in the square aspect ratio, you cannot seem to get the same looking image in a different aspect ratio even with the same seed and the exact same prompt. I don't think the other styles behaved like this. They at least mostly had some similarities. And last but not least, the Niji Journey style, which doesn't seem to have that much at all. Okay, portrait aspect ratio does have some changes. Half of the images are completely different. I feel like the portrait ratio images changed more compared to the landscape images. If anything, it seems like Niji Journey style gained some weird dark borders. The images did not have them before, but they do now. In the aspect ratio comparison, Niji style looks like it is quite consistent, just like 4B and 4A styles. I mean, it is not 100% that you will get the image look you want in a different aspect ratio with the same seed and same prompt, but it's better than a 0% chance. Some of the aspect ratios seem to have black borders quite often. But Niji is a different model than the other three, so the same fix may not have worked. So this was a short look at how much the different styles have changed and what has improved with the newest update. For the other prompts I tested, I added the comparison of the previous update when I had something to compare it to. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to my channel and leaving a like if you enjoyed this video. Otherwise, let's see how all the other prompts look like now.